Sometimes you don't have the resources necessary for a change. Sometimes you don't have people around you who give you advice in order for you to be able to change. So there are many different obstacles. And typically I shy away from giving formulas. So I'm not going to give any formula during this lecture on this is how to change and become like a Sahabi overnight or anything like that. But we are going to look at some of the guidelines concerning change. The first thing I want to say is that we need to be honest with ourselves. Yeah, we need to hold ourselves accountable or hold ourselves to account and find our weaknesses. So one of the ways to do that is to realize that there is something wrong with you, that you do make mistakes. One of the worst things that can happen is for someone to feel that they're okay. Now, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm all right. And you make excuses for every sin and every problem you have. Oh, this is my personality. Or I've always been that way. Oh, the hearts are pure. So many kinds of excuses for things. So the first thing is to be honest with yourself. And this has to do with sincerity a lot. So you know that you make mistakes. So if someone presents you with a mistake, then you accept it. You accept it. And if you're sincere with yourself, you don't have to play games and fake religiosity in front of people. You know what I'm talking about, right? You've probably seen people do things like that. Astaghfirullah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. Khalas, they're about to faint from so much iman in their heart. They're like, oh, Allah, brother. Khalas, they're going to faint, so much iman. Yeah, is this the real you? You know one of my favorite things? You watch the youth in the masjid. They're like, alhamdulillah, barakallahu feek, astaghfirullah. Oh, they're going to die, right? Then watch them play basketball. Like, is this the same group that was about to faint inside? Suddenly the thugs and street language comes out and attitude and okay. I'll tell you something. One time on YouTube I was watching some video. There's some young kid, he's reciting Quran before a conference, and he recites very well. He's like 9 years old or 10, but really recitation was very good, mashallah. He made a mistake. And then I read the comments. People were brutal. Brother, please take this video down immediately. This is not acceptable that the Quran is played with a mistake in it. And even though he was a little kid, 9 years old, what's your problem? He said, this is not acceptable. So I said, this guy, mashallah, he must be like really, he doesn't fool around at all. So I just clicked on his user profile just to see, maybe all his videos are astaghfirullah, alhamdulillah, right? And now YouTube, it shows you the last comment you made. You won't believe his last comment. I'm even ashamed to tell you. There was some girl dancing in skimpy clothing, and he was telling her, very good, very good. So, what happened to the standards that were superb like this, and suddenly, and that's why that's why the scholars say, you don't want to be an enemy of the shaitan in public, and then his best friend in private. You understand? In public, I'm the enemy, worst enemy of the shaitan. A'udhu billah. Some brothers, just something funny happens, astaghfirullah. They don't laugh. Type. And then they're a totally different person alone. So that means the worst of you only comes out when you're alone with Allah Azza wa Jal. That's horrible. You're an enemy of Iblis in public. And then you're the worst enemy of Allah when you're alone with Allah. That's nightmarish, wallahi. So if people are honest with themselves, we don't have to go into that. We don't have to do the fakery. We don't have to pretend. We are honest with ourselves and we hold ourselves to account before Allah Azza wa Jal holds us to account. So then advice, because if you're honest with yourself like that, you accept advice from people. You know you make mistakes. Allah and your brother or your sister comes and gives you advice. Do you accept it or not? Yeah. Now, as we're sitting here, we probably tell ourselves, yes, of course we'll accept advice. True or false? We all want to improve, right? So we'll accept advice. Yeah? Okay. How about this? Let's pick a tough one now. Suppose a sister wears hijab, okay? But she wears very tight clothing as well. The spray-on jeans, that tight, yeah? So it's very tight. It looks like someone sprayed it on. And very tight shirt. Now, which is worse actually? Let me give you two scenarios. A sister who is wearing baggy clothing. It's, what do you call it? Baggy, wavy, wide, yeah? And some of her hair is showing. Or a sister that's absolutely covering her hair, but she's wearing very tight clothing. Which is worse? The tight. No doubt the tight. And you telling me just these black strands of hair are worse than revealing her body? So what's the value then of this cover if everything else is out there? So, but the thing is then, give that sister advice. Will she accept it from you? There's a brother who sits with sisters a lot at the university, talking, giggling, stuff like that. Give him advice. Is he going to accept it? He knows it's wrong. Is he going to accept it? Or is he going to make excuses? Ya akhi, the hearts are pure. And what's the problem? We're only, classmates. And this is for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. Yeah? One time this guy came up to me. He says, I talk to women. He says, and I love them, but for the sake of Allah. I said, aren't you sweet? What is this? So do we make excuses or do we accept? Do we make excuses? If someone gives you advice, do you accept it? Or do you make excuses? Or do you reject the advice? You know something? It's natural for it to be painful and hard to go down. I met some brothers, 3 of them, they made a pact with each other. They'll always give each other advice. And they said in the beginning it was very difficult. Why should it be difficult? We said we want to improve. So I don't want to be making a mistake. You tell me, so I correct myself, so I always improve. And we made this deal, and yet it was difficult. Because it's not common anymore, this advice thing. People now, you give them a piece of advice and they tell you, this is how I am. Or they make other excuses. I knew someone, he always made excuses for his bad manners. So he said, in business, I'm rude. In a meeting, I'll tear you up and I'll embarrass you in front of everybody. But right after the meeting, we'll go out, we'll have kebab together. What makes you think I want to have kebab with you? I'm a very bad-mannered person. Is there such a thing in Islam where I can be very polite here, but here I can cut your throat? And then afterwards we can go out together. There's no such thing. Your manners, your akhlaq, this is part of who you are as a Muslim. It's constant. It's not something that